All right, so picture this. India, land of sunshine, right? You think everyone's getting all that vitamin D just from being outside.
Hmm.
And wouldn't that be nice? But, well, a new study has kind of thrown a wrench in that image. Turns out there's a pretty big health problem hiding right there in plain sight.
Yeah, it really makes you question those assumptions, right? We automatically link sunshine and good health, especially when we talk about vitamin D.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, this research comes from the ICRIER, the Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations, and they partnered with the NVKA Foundation. They presented it just yesterday, April 8th, 2025, at a huge international conference.
Wow.
Picture it. 300 policymakers, doctors, academics, all gathered, and then this bombshell.
Hmm.
1 in 5 people in India, 1 in 5 are deficient in vitamin D.
That is a surprising number.
Right. And it's not just a small thing. The health implications are actually really serious. It's almost like we've got this hidden epidemic going on, a not so sunny secret, if you will, especially for a country known for its sunshine.
It really shows that just having sunlight isn't always the answer. There's more to it than that.
You're right. It's way more complex. So ready to really dig into this. Let's take a deep dive into this whole vitamin D problem and see why it's not getting the attention it needs.
I'm ready. Let's see what the study has to offer.
Perfect. First off, where's this problem the worst? Geographically, I mean. The study really points a finger at eastern India. They've got a deficiency rate of, get this, 38.81%. That's like almost 4 in 10 people.
That's a huge number.
It is. So what could be causing such high rates in that specific region?
Well, a few things seem to be at play. The study talks about urban sprawl. Eastern India has some pretty dense urban areas.
Yeah.
Not a lot of wide open spaces for sunlight to reach everyone.
Yeah, makes sense.
Plus, we've got to factor in air quality. More smog means less of those UVB rays. Those are the ones that trigger our skin to make vitamin D getting through.
Right. And then there's just how people live their lives these days.
Exactly. Spending more time indoors, whether it's work or, just relaxing with some streaming services, all adds up to less time in the sun.
It all paints a pretty clear picture, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
More people living in apartments, less access to open spaces, the air quality issues. And let's be honest, it is easy to get sucked into those streaming services. But, it's not just one specific group that's affected by this, right? The study mentions a few groups that are particularly vulnerable.
Exactly. They specifically mention adolescents, infants, the elderly, and, well, women of all ages.
Okay. So teenagers, I can kind of see that. I mean, all that screen time, probably not as much playing outside like we used to do.
You're right. And adolescence is when those bones are really growing fast, so they need a good supply of vitamin D. But the trend is moving towards, more sitting inside and maybe not the healthiest diets.
True. And what about infants? Why are they at risk?
Well, they mainly get their vitamin D from two places: sunlight and supplements. So making sure they get enough, especially in those first few months, is super important. And then the elderly, well, I can imagine mobility becoming an issue there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you can't get around easily, you're likely to be spending more time indoors. Maybe there are health issues keeping them inside too. And our skin just doesn't produce vitamin D as efficiently as we get older, makes them quite vulnerable. And then the study talks about women of all ages. That seems a little broad, doesn't it? Is there a common thread there?
It is interesting, right? I mean, so many women are juggling work, family, all those responsibilities. Maybe there's just not enough time in the day for sunlight. Plus, some cultural factors, maybe clothing choices in some communities might be playing a part in how much sun exposure they get.
Yeah, likely a mix of social and lifestyle factors all coming together.
Exactly. And one thing that really jumped out from this study was the difference between cities and rural areas when it came to vitamin D levels.
Yeah.
The numbers for those big urban areas are honestly kind of scary. Vadodara, 89% deficiency. Surat, 88%. Mumbai, 78%. Delhi, 72%. Those are some seriously high numbers. And then you compare that to rural areas where the rates are way lower. It's almost like we've given it the sunshine for, well, skyscrapers.
That's a really good way to put it. I mean, it shows how much our environment and our daily routines affect us. In rural areas, people are working outdoors more, doing things like farming, so they're getting that regular sun exposure, even if it's not super intense. And that seems to be, well, protective compared to those more indoor-centric city lives.
Makes you think, doesn't it? About all the trade-offs we make in the name of modern life. All that convenience and technology. But maybe we're missing out on something pretty basic. And this whole thing, it's bigger than just strong bones, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about avoiding fractures later in life.
Oh, absolutely. Vitamin D is essential for absorbing calcium and phosphorus. Think of it like the key that unlocks the door for calcium to get from our food into our blood so it can build strong bones. Without it, you get conditions like rickets in kids, where bones get weak and deformed, and osteomalacia in adults, where bones get soft and painful. But that's not all. Vitamin D interacts with tons of tissues and organs. It affects our muscles, our moods, heart health, even how our bodies handle blood sugar.
Wow.
And there's research looking into how it plays a role in our immune systems and even preventing some cancers. So, yeah, this deficiency, it goes way beyond just our bones.
Yeah, it sounds like a chain reaction. One little deficiency can really spiral into all these bigger health problems. Dr. Ashish Chaudhry called it a silent epidemic, and I think that's pretty spot on. It's like this hidden villain that's messing with individuals, families, even national health goals.
That's a great analogy. And because the symptoms can be really vague or get blamed on other things, a lot of people might not even realize they're deficient until it's a big problem. That's why figuring out why this is happening is so important.
Okay, so we've got a handle on who's at risk and what the health impacts can be. Now let's get into the why. Why is this such a big deal in a country that gets so much sun? We've touched on lifestyle, more people living and working inside.
Definitely. I mean, you can live in the sunniest place on earth, but
Right.
if you're spending most of your time indoors, working in an office, commuting in a car, and then hanging out at home, you're just not getting enough of those UVB rays that make vitamin D.
Right, right. And then there's the whole diet piece, especially important in India.
Huge factor. Good sources of vitamin D are limited, and the typical Indian diet might not be packed with them. Things like fatty fish, eggs, and fortified dairy products are good sources. But fish consumption might be low in some areas, or for people who are vegetarian, which is a significant portion of the population, something like 30%. Even non-vegetarians, maybe they just don't eat these foods often enough. And dairy intake is actually pretty low, I think around 8-14% of what's recommended. And, fortified foods, they're not as easy to find in India compared to some other places.
It's like everything's working against us, isn't it?
Right.
Less sun because of our lifestyle, and then a diet that doesn't fill in the gap. Now, the study also mentioned some, well, systemic challenges, like things related to policy and economics.
Yeah, and this is where it gets tricky. Is staying healthy becoming a luxury? A single vitamin D test can cost over our 1500. That's a lot of money for some families. Could be a good chunk of their grocery budget. So some people probably can't even afford to find out their vitamin D levels. And then there's that 18% GST, that nationwide tax on vitamin D supplements, adding another barrier. I mean, if basic health necessities have such high taxes, it's no wonder people struggle to stay on top of things.
That's such a crucial point. If you can't afford to get tested or afford the supplements to fix the problem, well, your health basically depends on how much money you have. It's not fair. So let's get back to the science a bit. We know vitamin D is important, but what does it actually do besides just making our bones strong?
Right. So at its core, it helps our bodies absorb calcium and phosphorus from our food. Those are the building blocks of strong bones. Without enough vitamin D, kids can get rickets, where their bones become weak and bendy, and adults can get osteomalacia, which makes bones soft and painful. But it goes further than that. Vitamin D affects so many parts of our bodies. It influences how our muscles work, how we regulate our moods, the health of our hearts, and even how our body manages blood sugar. Research is even looking into its role in our immune systems and preventing certain types of cancer. So, yeah, not having enough, it's not just about bones.
Got it. And going back to those higher deficiency rates, especially in Eastern India and younger people, like those numbers we mentioned, 84% in teens under 25, 81% in the 25-40 age group. Are there other scientific reasons for that? Besides lifestyle and diet, I mean. The study mentioned pollution and maybe skin tone.
Those are definitely important factors. High pollution levels, like what you see in some urban areas of eastern India, can block some of those UVB rays that we need for vitamin D production. And people with darker skin have more melanin, which is the pigment that gives skin its color. But it also acts like a natural sunscreen. So people with darker skin generally need more sun exposure to produce the same amount of vitamin D as someone with lighter skin. Those factors, along with less time outside, could be contributing to those higher deficiency rates.
Right, it's complicated. But the good news is that iCryer and ANVKA, the groups behind the study, they didn't just point out the problem, they also came up with some potential solutions. A 9-point action plan. That sounds promising.
It does. And what's great is they're not looking for a quick fix. They realize this is a complex problem that needs a multifaceted approach. One of the key points is getting different government ministries to work together, like the Ministries of Health, Finance, Food, and AYU ESHES. They all need to be on the same page.
Yeah, that makes sense. You need everyone working together to tackle something this big. So what else is in their action plan?
They're calling for a national awareness campaign called Vitamin D Kuposhan Mukt Bharat, which means Vitamin D Malnutrition Free India. It's all about educating people about the importance of vitamin D and how to get enough. They even suggested things like yoga breaks at schools and workplaces to get people outside more. Food fortification's another big one. Adding vitamin D to staple foods like milk and oil. That way, people get more vitamin D without having to really change their diets.
That's clever. Makes it easier for everyone. And what about people who are already deficient?
Right. So they're pushing for subsidized vitamin D supplements, make them available through existing healthcare systems like Anganwadis and primary health centers. That way, vulnerable populations can access them. And a big thing, they want to lower the GST on those supplements, make them more affordable. And to really understand the problem and track progress, they're emphasizing the need for cheaper, easier vitamin D testing. Plus, continuing research and monitoring, of course.
It's hitting the problem from all sides, isn't it? Prevention, treatment, and ongoing evaluation. Dr. Arpita Mukherjee, one of the researchers, said this is a wake-up call and that we need data-driven action to reach our health goals by 2030. Makes me think of that national push to add iodine to salt. Remember that. A big effort that really paid off.
It's a perfect example. The iodized salt initiative showed what can happen when the government gets behind something and there's a coordinated effort. The interesting thing here is the contrast between hoping people will change their behavior, which, might not be enough, and taking more direct action. Things like mandatory food fortification, subsidies for supplements, big awareness campaigns. That's what it takes to really solve this at a national level.
I agree, because these aren't just statistics. We're talking about real people, right?
Yeah.
Imagine a teenager in Kolkata, tired all the time, achy, and everyone just brushes it off as growing pains. Or an older person in Delhi, always in pain, and they think it's just because they're getting older. But what if it's vitamin D deficiency?
Exactly, and it goes beyond just feeling bad. It can hit people financially, too. Imagine a serious complication, like a hip fracture, which is often linked to low vitamin D and osteoporosis. That can be devastating, especially if you don't have good health insurance. The costs of treatment and long-term care can add up fast.
It makes it real, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This isn't just some abstract health issue. It's about people's lives and their financial well-being. So, wrapping up this deep dive, the main takeaway is that this vitamin D deficiency in India is a huge problem, impacting a big chunk of the population, even though there's plenty of sun.
That's it. And it shows that just being in a sunny country isn't a guarantee of good vitamin D levels. Our lifestyles, what we eat, even our economic policies all play a part in this whole not-so-sunny secret.
Really makes you think about your own habits,
Mm.
How much time am I actually spending outside in the sun? Am I getting enough vitamin D from my food? Everyone listening should think about their own risk factors.
Here's a question for everyone at home. India has all this sunshine. So what are the most important changes we need to make to fix this problem and improve everyone's health? How do we balance modern life with our need for sunlight and those essential nutrients? It's something to think about.